What is going on, YouTube? Joe here with Culination Media, bringing you another episode of CM Strats, and today we're going to be taking a look at Special Flygon, which was requested by you guys on the last episode. I asked, what do you guys want to see? What piques your interest the most? And Flygon turned out to be one of the top choices, so I decided to do that. There's a couple of other ones that were right up there with it, such as my shift resets. And honestly, that one's pretty standard, but I will certainly go over it because this series is not supposed to be something that's like, oh look, an innovative set, it's the most viable thing ever. It's more so just to show you what I use, because if you need help competitively, or if you're looking to build something similar to what I have, this will just give you a little bit of guidance, a little bit of help, and you can learn just a little bit from it. So, with that being said, if you've been on the channel for a long time, you know that I run two different kinds of Flygons. My physical one, I run with a couple of different items. You can run it with Life Orb, or Choice Band, or Choice Scarf. I just kind of interchange it. But the one that's really neat is Special Flygon. That's what we're taking a look at today. Before we get into the whole analysis, though, I'd like to remind you that if you have not done so already, make sure you're showing some support to the channel and the series by clicking that thumbs up button right below this video, or the dislike button. If you really dislike the video, then go ahead and in the comment section, let me know why you disliked it and why you thought it was big poop. But that being said, let's take a look at this Flygon here. We have a timid nature because Flygon's base speed is 100, which is great for outspeeding a lot of threats, and that timid nature just gives it a little tiny boost in speed, helps it outspeed some other things, such as Adamant Garchomp, which is a big one because you can nail it with the Draco Meteor. That's pretty cool, and there's a few other ones as well. So running Timid is always better. I mean, you could run Modest if you really wanted the extra power, but you're going to miss out on outspeeding some things. EV's pretty standard. We've got 252, 252 for just a very standard spread. We've got 252 in special attack and speed. So you're maximizing your damage output and then what you can outspeed as well. You wouldn't run Timid with not max speed. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Yeah, but I do run choice specs on this because this is really what gives Flygon its power. It's going to be... I mean, it hits pretty hard, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not nearly as powerful as its Choice Band set because Flygon's physical attack, is base 100, its special attack is base 80. So you kind of need the choice specs in order to deal significant amounts of damage, and it does hit surprisingly hard. I mean, it gets the stab Draco Meteor, so it's going to be hitting a lot of things. We see the ability is going to be Levitate, so obviously you don't really have a choice. You're going to be immune to ground type moves, so you can switch in on them, and that is precisely what makes Pokemon that are weak to ground type moves good partners for Flygon, such as Magnezone, which gets a special mention for being able to resist all of Flygon's weaknesses, Ice, Fairy, and Dragon. So Magnezone just eats all of them up, which is pretty darn cool. Actually, now that I think about it, any steel type. But Magneton gets a special mention because it's weak to ground. So other popular steel type Pokemon like Scizor are not weak to ground, so they don't match up as well. But that is a thing. So let's take a look at the moves now. Before we go over partners, I'll revisit that idea in a little bit. But we have Draco Meteor as the primary move. And the reason for this is because this special Flygon is probably one of the best lures that I've found. Both in UU and OU. I didn't even mention that Flygon is in the UU tier, but I do use it in OU a lot. I've seen it have a lot of success. So, I mean, don't worry about bringing it to OU. It's not going to succeed in every situation, obviously, but it does perform rather well. So, what I was saying was, it's such a great lure Pokemon, especially if you lead off with it against something that has Will-O-Wisp, because they're always going to try to Willow you. They're going to assume that you're physical, try to Willow you, and you can nail it with any of your respective coverage moves. We have the Draco Meteor, which is going to be your main attack. It does lower your special attack, so you're going to want to switch out after using that most of the time. But it hits so hard the first time, it really does. We have the Earth Power, which is secondary stab. It really does hit a lot of things. It hits steel types that may want to predict a dragon type move. They think you're going to go for Outrage or something. You can predict that and go for the Earth Power. We also have the Flamethrower to hit those Steel types that are not weak to ground, like the Skarmory, like the Scizor, and Ferrothorn is another one that would love to switch in on Flygon. It's not going to appreciate a Flamethrower. And then we have the Giga Drain, which is primarily there for the water types that want to switch in that are packing the Ice Beam and feel like they can take a hit from you. One of the main ones that I've seen that love to do that is Slowbro. Giga Drain does a surprising amount, so you can really hit those water types hard. Even if they're specially defensive like Slow King, they're less likely to switch in on you anyway because they're assuming that you are going to be physical. But the main purpose of this set is to draw out Pokemon that you would not normally be able to take out if you were a physical set. So we're talking about physical walls that love to come in, like said Slowbro, like said Ferrothorn, which would love to come in. If you can predict that Flamethrower, Ferrothorn's not going to last long, and you outspeed it, so it's going to go bye-bye. It's going to go bye-bye. Such a great thing. Another thing that I did not mention, or I think I did mention it actually, but we're talking about Will-O-Wisp. Pokemon that I love watching try to Willow Flygon, Rotom Wash. Loves to just stay in on a Flygon and Willow him, and you're going to proceed to hit him with a Giga Drain, and it hits hard. It really, really does. And Pokemon that are not weak to one of your coverage moves, you can just go for a Draco Meteor, like a Sableye, especially physically defensive Sableye. Comes in, tries to Willow you. It's going to take so much damage from a Draco, it's not even funny. Not even funny. Now let's take a minute and go over some of the partners. Basically, you want something that can cover the weaknesses. So, for example, fire types, they resist ice, which Flygon is weak to, and they resist, I was about to say fire, but it is a fire type, resists fairy as well. Doesn't resist dragon, so that's what makes steel types a little bit better because they resist all of Flygon's weaknesses. As I mentioned before, Magnezone is a great one. Florges is actually a great Pokemon too, because it can sponge those special hits, because Fairy and Ice, and a lot of times even Dragon, the Dragon Pulses, the Hydreigons, those type of Pokemon, they all tend to be special, so Florges can just sponge those hits. You can also Wish Pass, you can Toxic if it's a wall. You just have a lot of different options. Now, before I go over some more teammates, I want to actually show you, before I forget, because chances are I'm going to forget. You guys know how I am with this kind of stuff. I forget all the time. I want to show you a little small clip that I was able to dig up from some older battles of this Flygon in action. Something I didn't include in the last episode, but I'm going to include it here. This was actually from a mono-type battle that was mono ground on my side versus mono water. We're going to see the beginning of the battle here. My opponent leads off with the Rotom Wash. I've got the Flygon out. I'm expecting him to go for the Willow. That is what he does on the first turn. As I mentioned earlier, they love to Willow you, so I'm going to smack him with a Giga Drain here, and look how much damage that does. That is ridiculous. And now he's going to withdraw because obviously he doesn't want to leave this thing in to die. He's going to send out his Frogger, the Politoed, which most likely is specially defensive, judging by how much damage this Giga Drain did, because I believe it was a crit. Yeah, that does so much damage. That was a crit. To a specially defensive Politoed, that does some pretty good damage. And we do get another Giga Drain off the turn after, which almost is enough to take him out. So if you're dealing with physically defensive Politoed, you're most likely... I mean, I'd have to calc it, but you're going to be dealing a lot of damage, basically. That's what you need to know. And you saw, that was a bold-natured Rotom, pretty sure. Pretty sure the classic physically defensive one. That Giga Drain did so much damage. It did like 90%. It's insane. That's insane. So if it's physically defensive Rotom, or if it's offensive Rotom without HP investment, which I guess it could have been that too. It could have been more of an offensive or a utility without HP investment. I'm not really sure. But the important thing to know is that it does so much damage. And that's precisely why I love Flygon. You get free turns off quite a bit. Unfortunately, you can only get that surprise factor once. After you use that up, then you have to be able to take out the special walls that are going to come in to wall this Flygon. So you want something that can remove walls like, Florges, or if you're in UU rather, Florges is a big special wall there. You could have Blissey, which is also in UU now, which is kind of crazy to me. I guess Chansey's still OU, I think. That's a weird thing to have going on. Chansey's OU, but Blissey, the evolved form, is UU. Kind of crazy, but you want things that can hit really hard on the physical side to take out those special walls that Flygon can't deal with. So great partners could be something as simple as a Choice Scarf Sock that can come in and start close combating these special walls. Blissey and Chansey are not going to be able to take too many of those. Haxorus, actually, even though it's still Dragon type and doesn't really synergize well with Flygon, it can really break down those special walls with its Outrage. It doesn't really matter what set you're running. You could run Scarf, you could run D-Dance, Outrage, D-Dance, Dragon Claw, D-Dance, Dual Chop. Doesn't really matter. Anything that is a physical wall breaker partners up very well with Flygon. Going over some more teammates. You want something that can handle bulky water types, because they love to come in. You can't do a whole lot of damage to them other than Giga Drain, and most of the time you won't be able to kill them fast enough because they'll be able to just one-shot you with an Ice Beam, and that is not a good time. So electric types work out great as a partner for Flygon because you can switch in on ground type attacks like Earthquake that are aimed for them. So for example, if you have Electivire, which can take out bulky water type Pokemon that would otherwise kill you with Ice Beam, such as Milotic. Then if they switch in their ground type Pokemon and try to hit you with an Earthquake, you can then switch out into Flygon. Most Pokemon that have Earthquake are more physical, so you can hit it up with any of your special moves, and that's basically how it goes. Arcanine is another good partner for Flygon because you can handle Ice types, so you can switch in on, I don't know, Ice Shards, or incoming Ice Shards, or Icicle Crashes, or Ice Punches from Weavile. You get an Intimidate off. It's a good time. Darmanitan is very similar. You can handle those Ice types pretty easily. Darmanitan doesn't really want to switch in on many attacks, but you can handle those Ice types, so that is cool. Fire types also resist the Fairy type moves, so that works out well for you as well. Things that can handle Fairy types, like Poison types. Nidoking could potentially work well as a great partner because, again, weak to ground. So you can switch in the Flygon on incoming Earthquakes and Earth Powers and things of that nature. And Nidoking can usually handle those Fairy types. Even Florges, if it's got a Life Orb, it's going to be dealing a lot of damage with a Sludge Wave or a Sludge Bomb. So that is pretty much what I wanted to go over there. So I don't think I missed anything. But we'll go over a little bit as like a conclusion here. So basically, partners for Flygon include things that can take out special walls, things that complement its weakness, and things that Flygon can switch into to cover their weaknesses, such as Earthquake being the main one because you're immune to it. Electric type attacks are another thing. So actually one partner that I did not mention that would work well would be the Gyarados, because you can switch in on electric type moves, and Gyarados can take ice type moves fairly well. So not Mega Gyarados though, because Mega Gyarados shares the Fairy weakness, and yeah, so that's not as desirable. But yeah, so that is pretty much the gist of the special Flygon set. I don't know if people were using this last gen. I was, and I thought it worked great. And it appears to still be doing plenty of work here in 6th gen. It is not the strongest thing in the world, but the surprise factor, especially if you can time it right and lure out the right things, you can eliminate huge threats from your opponent's team before they even understand what's going on. And sometimes that's all the Flygon really needs to do. If it means that you're removing a Rotom Wash from the match, that could, really help out your team, especially if, you just need you need to Earthquake everything with something else, and Rotom Wash is immune to that. Removing that Rotom Wash could be the difference between victory and defeat. So, yeah, like I said, I think that's everything that I wanted to cover. If you guys have any questions about the set, I feel like it's pretty straightforward. It's not a complicated set by any means. If you have any questions, feel free to write in the comment section below, or my Twitter link is always in the description of every video, so you can hit me up there, ask me any question you like. I'd be happy to get back to you and answer you. answer your question rather, and get everything squared away. Also, make sure that if there is a Pokemon you would like to see in one of these videos, I don't know. I mean, I run a bunch of weird stuff, so I run standard things, I run non-standard things, I run things that I literally just make up, so I can understand if you guys want to see the setup on what I have, just as a reference. Maybe it's something you want to try, I don't really know. But if you have suggestions, feel free to either comment on this video or, again, tweet them at me, and I'll try to keep a tally, try to keep everything straight, and try to include as many of your suggestions in future videos as possible. So with that being said, I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all for the next episode. But until then, game on.